Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with another NBA topic. And of course, I've seen probably one of the most discussed debates of the 90s, early 2000 era about two of the greatest power forwards of all time. Now, most people debate who's the greatest between Kevin Garnett or Tim Duncan. And of course, these things are pretty subjective and it's about who you like more or whose style that you probably relate to more. And most people would say KG because he's more, more socially outward. He's more extroverted, while Tim Duncan is more introverted, and Tim Duncan is pretty fundamental. I mean, they call him the big fundamental because, he didn't have a flashy game. He didn't dunk a lot. He pretty much just put points on the board and was very good defensively. So he didn't do anything exciting to really sell tickets. He just won games and put up, great stats. But he didn't have a lot of flash to him. He didn't have a lot of style to him. He didn't have like a signature shoe or these fancy shoe deals or did a lot of interviews or was very exciting. He was pretty monotone for his style and for what he was doing, but he got the job done. So, two of the best front court players to ever grace the NBA court, which one would you rather have in for that job? And I always think about context. Tim Duncan played for Greg Popovich his whole career in one system and played with, three Hall of Famers and Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, David Robinson, and then later he played with Kawhi Leonard. So essentially, he played with four Hall of Famers throughout his career. KG, Kevin Garnett, spent most of his career in Minnesota, and he didn't play with really any Hall of Famers until he got to Boston when he was traded to Boston, and he played with Ray Allen, and he played with Paul Pierce, and then Rajon Rondo. So he played with three other Hall of Famers as well, but that was later in his career when towards the end of his career. So, and he only played with them a couple of years, but for the most part in his prime, those I believe 7 or 8 years he played in Minnesota. Um, he didn't play with any Hall of Famers. He played with some good players in Latrell Sprewell and I believe like Malik Rose, but he never played with any outright Hall of Famers like he did in Boston. But Tim Duncan did have the privilege of playing underneath uh, Greg Popovich in one system for the 20 years that he played. Because we know Kevin Garnett was a big fish in a small pond for most of his years. So that for a little bit of context. But for the skill set wise, um, Tim Kevin Garnett had to deal with Tim Duncan in his era, and it was pretty much them battling every year for Pro Bowls and All Pros and things like that. I mean, not Pro Bowls, All Stars, and all NBA teams and things like that. So they competed a lot in that position. And unfortunately for Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan was in his era, um, because if you're looking at scenarios, you would think if Kevin Garnett do the same thing in San Antonio that Tim Duncan did, and could Tim Duncan do the same things that Kevin Garnett did in Minnesota or make that team better? Because when I was thinking about it, I believe Kevin Garnett could still strive in the offense of Greg Popovich, and he was a very good defensive player, so he can pretty much do the same things, and he was more athletic Tim Duncan. Now, Tim Duncan and Minnesota, I believe, would have been frustrated because I don't think he could do better than what Kevin Garnett did. I think he could do the same, but I think Kevin Garnett would have done exactly probably the same, if not better, in San Antonio because they had to battle the most competition they had to battle with was, of course, Sacramento Kings because you had Chris Webber at power forward over there in Sacramento. But the biggest challenge was the LA Lakers because you had to deal with Kobe and Shaq. Now, San Antonio lost couple of rings due to the Lakers and what Shaq and Kobe was able to do. And I think if you have Kevin Garnett, it'll help you a little bit better. Of course, he can't guard a Shaquille O'Neal because just the size difference. But I think he'll be more versatile and can make those jump shots and just be more aggressive. So I think they might have fared well and maybe could have won a game or two. Well, won a series or two against the Lakers back then. But I do think Kevin Garnett could have did better, or if not the same, in San Antonio. Opposed to Tim Duncan, I don't think he would have did any better in Minnesota. So I do think for just the athleticism and the tenacity of a Kevin Garnett, I would put him slightly over Tim Duncan. Now, Tim Duncan is very underrated because of his non-flashiness and his ability just to be fundamental and not be so flashy. So I think his game is very much so missing from today's game. While Kevin Garnett wasn't really flashy, but he just had more style, more grace, he had more swag. While Tim Duncan was just, bring your lunch pail to work and come home with it. Kevin Garnett was more, shaking hands, talking to people, more trash talky on the court. Tim Duncan really didn't talk a lot of trash or do all these things. But I don't know if he would have worked in the system of Greg Popovich because they frown upon these things. They more had those quiet types, those types that weren't really outgoing. They had a lot of, even to this day, when you think of the Wemby and Greg Popovich is not the coach anymore, but he's in the front office. They look for those players that are more reserved or more quiet and don't really venture out into like podcasts and things like that. You won't really see a Spurs player out and about or real social or even recognizable because they just don't get out that way. They're more ran like the New England Patriots so much. So, but I do think Kevin Garnett is a more athletic, more outgoing Tim Duncan. But if I had one to create a team around, it'll probably be Kevin Garnett just because of his athleticism and you can do more things with him and he's more versatile in that aspect. But if you pick either one, of course you can't be wrong because this is all subjective. But I do like Kevin Garnett's game a little bit more than Tim Duncan's, even though I feel Tim Duncan is grossly underrated. So tell me your thoughts about who you like more between Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan as power forwards in the NBA. And until next time, I'll see you next time.